Once upon a time, I was recording all of these on Adobe Premiere, which I have mentioned many times, 200 and whatever days. I don't even know what day this is because of circumstances which I'll describe in a minute. So, anyways, I realized that I was gonna have to switch because my Adobe license ran out because my previous employer had it and not me because I canceled my personal one several years ago for reasons of cost, obviously, and I didn't need it. So now I'm using DaVinci Resolved, and a funny thing happened when I recorded the first voiceover. I forgot to speed up my video, my screen recording. I didn't speed it up at all. I was so concerned about getting this audio to work. I mean, it's not hard, but I was just going through the tutorial. And so I recorded for like 35 minutes and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I just feel like I'm just writing super slow. And then it just literally dawned on me that, oh my gosh, I didn't speed it up. And so I wasted a long time. And hence I have delayed writing this or doing the voiceover. And now that I look at the date that I wrote this, February 21st, and today is April 23rd. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I'm 8 weeks and some change behind, and I don't know when I'm going to catch up. And when I did the voiceover, I had a lot of insightful things to say, I must admit. But now I tried to play with the speed of the voiceover and the script to try to make them all match, and it would have been virtually impossible. So I figure I'll just start from scratch. I do remember talking about writing for the sake of writing. I know there's some people who will say, I'm going to write for 2 hours a day. Some people will say, I'm going to write 10 pages a day, 5 pages a day. Some people will say, well, I've only got 30 minutes today because of other obligations. So do I write or do I just not write? So do you write for the sake of writing, or do you write only when you have something either to say or just the discipline of being able to write, maybe not literally every day, but at least I would say at a minimum 3 days a week, hopefully 7, but at least 5 or 6. So the point that I was making at that time was that I feel like some of this probably last many, many days has been sort of that funk of writing for the sake of writing, just trying to find the story and not necessarily being able to. And it just is obviously frustrating when you've spent this long at it and you still don't really know. Maybe you know the story you're telling, you just don't know how to tell it, or maybe you know how to tell it, but you don't know what the story you're telling is. And what makes me say that is that I'm on page 87, 88, and if this is going to be 105 pages or less, then we need to be in the third act by now. And this is not third act material. And besides that, it's just, I mean, the scenes are just not working. Lexi calling her mom psychotic. I mean, the whole thing of Jake getting shot and everything, it's not bad. And then him saying he needs to speak with Luke. It's not bad, but it doesn't work in this part of the script, I don't think. And it may just not work at all. So I guess the point is sometimes you write and write and write, and maybe while you're writing, you know it's really not that good, but you keep writing anyways. The alternative being you quit writing and come back tomorrow or in a week or in a month when you're inspired. I don't know that I've ever taken that long off of writing. I don't think I'd be afraid to. I don't think I'd lose the whatever abilities or skills or talents I have to know how to write, but it just seems like you're cheating yourself when you're spending that time away from a script. So the alternative is sometimes just to write, and you could say there's no bad writing, because even when you're writing badly, you're learning what's good and what's bad. And maybe that's the point of writing a lot. Um, I could not say. What I could say is that this whole bit of Rachel's right there, and I'm shortening it up somewhat. When in doubt, you can always put in a beat, and that makes it seem shorter, or put in a little description like that. Um, but this stuff is frankly not good. I don't think it's good, and now I've got 2 months, 9 weeks of looking back on it, and again knowing what I've written between then and now. Some of it good, some of it maybe not good, but kind of going in a different direction. So frankly, this is just sort of doing the voiceover for the sake of doing it, and to have it all documented for when this script gets sold. The other thing on DaVinci is the screen disappears after like 2 minutes, which is kind of annoying unless you keep running your mouse or trackball around it. I do like the change that I just made where I said his name is Jake, because Rachel obviously trying to impersonalize him, and Lexi bringing her back to the fact that, he's a real person. She cares about him, obviously. And then Rachel it's just, I don't know. I don't know how excited I was at the time of writing it compared to how I am now feeling about it. But it just, again, maybe it could work somewhere else in the movie, but it certainly can't work here. Because when you think about it, it's the midpoint, the bad guys close in, all is lost, Dark Night of the Soul, and then it breaks into 3. And it's funny, speaking of break into 3, I was watching Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory last night, this 1973 version with Gene Wilder, which is infinitely better than the Johnny Depp version, which I watched it, but it was just bad. So the movie is 1 hour and 39 minutes long. And of course, there's probably 4 or 5 minutes of credit. So say it's 1 hour and 35 minutes long. So 95 minutes long. And I never really thought about it. I like the movie. I think it's, for what it is, I think it's good. But for everyone who's seen it, which is probably about everyone, think about where the break is between Act 2 and Act 3. And I don't know this for sure, but just going by whatever typical rules you have. If you hear some weird sounds in the background, that's my hard drive. I'm burning some DVDs. So obviously there's 5 kids. One by one, they get picked off. The first act is really pretty long because it's when he gets the golden ticket, that is the beginning of the second act, right? Because that is, I would safely say, the break into 2, but it's still, as I recall, it's close to 30 minutes in. Maybe it's not that far. And then, of course, with musicals, it's hard because they sing songs and stuff. But so he gets into the chocolate factory, and one by one, the kids do bad things and they get picked off. I don't know. I would say, I wasn't timing it, but I would say probably the fizzy lifting drink would be the false victory, because they're having a good time and they don't think that Willy Wonka is going to find out. And he does, of course. But so you've got to say that, there's really no bad guys close in, so to speak. But you would have to say that All Is Lost is that very small time frame when the grandpa goes in to find out from Willy Wonka why the tour's over, and Willy Wonka tells him about the fizzy lifting drinks and that he knows, and they've got to clean everything, and you get nothing, sir. And then he says, "Good day, sir." I said, "Good day." I think that's the line. And so there's All Is Lost, right? And Night of the Dark Soul is, to me, it lasts a very, very short period of time because Charlie goes in. Grandpa says, well, let's get out of here. We're going to sue him or whatever. But then Charlie goes in and gives Willy Wonka the everlasting gobstopper. And the moment that Gene Wilder / Willy Wonka's hand comes out and covers it, that's obviously the turning point. And then he says, Charlie, my boy, he has something he says under his breath. But then he says, you've won, you did it. I always knew you could. And then they're, literally a minute later, they're in the Wonka-vator. It goes up and they talk, you can move in, you and your family. And then he says, but remember what happened to the little boy who got everything he wanted. He lived happily ever after, or something like that. And then they break through, they go out in the air, or maybe they go out in the air first, and then he has that. And so, I mean, Act 3, if that is Act 3, I didn't time it, but there's no way that that's 5 minutes. I mean, it might be 5 minutes, obviously including the credits. But, so that's, I don't know where you could argue that Act 3 starts, if not there, because it's probably an untraditional paced movie maybe, but the four kids, there's really no time in the Chocolate Factory when you would argue that, hey, Act 3 has started, like when Violet gets turned into the bad egg or whatever. So that was just interesting, and I had never really thought about that. And I know the Wizard of Oz movie has got, I remember reading or hearing that it has sort of an odd act break structure. I mean, when you think about it, obviously the whole setup and the cyclone comes, and that's, she goes into Oz, and that's Act 2, and then she goes to see the wizard and meets the people, blah, 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 or not the people, but the characters, and then goes to get the witch, and then she gets the witch, and that's sort of the climax. But then yet she comes back to the wizard, and they have the thing and the man behind the curtain, and then they go home. So it is a very, unless you could argue that maybe you could argue the break into 3 is when the witch gets killed, but I don't know. Anyway, very interesting. So back to my script. My point is that on page 88, I should be well into Act 3, or at least into it to some extent. And yet I've talked for like 5-6 minutes, and I appear to be on the page that I was at when I went off on my tangent about Willy Wonka. It is interesting that the movie is called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and of course the book is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think you can see why they did that. Remember his name. I wonder if this is from Dad. So there's this whole part, because I had thought before, what is the father going to do with Lexi, and this is all changing. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I talked with someone who works at the same company I do, and she used to work in the foster care system, so I got some interesting insights from her in terms of what sort of person Lexi might be at this point, which is going to make me probably go back and do a little tweaking, because she is remarkably well adjusted. And I think in a way that's okay, but I need to give her a little bit more in the early going. So my problem here is that Rachel has exposed herself. She's shown her cards for being crazy, and yet, where is she taking her? She's obviously taking her to the airport. Is she going to tell Lexi that? So it just, I call shotgun. I could barf when I read that line. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So now Holly is sort of on Rachel's trail, but not really. And this whole thing, this doesn't work. So of course the idea is that Luke is going to put on Jake's clothes, and then he's going to appear somewhere where Rachel sees him and either thinks, he's risen from the dead, or he's somehow not hurt that bad, or after him. But this just doesn't work. It's almost hard to do the voiceover when it's just so obvious that it ain't work. And yet, as I said, it's part of the process, and I guess I'm committed to doing this. Oh, if only for the annals of screenwriting annals. But the good news is I will be writing the script later today, working on it. Through the trees, maybe 150 yards away, she sees. It's hard to put distances in scripts because, sometimes you just don't know unless you're literally saying, a mile down the road. But sometimes you have to stop and think, at what distance could you or could you not identify someone if it was a clear, a clearing or a unobstructed view versus looking at something or someone through the trees. If the person's moving, if a car's moving, can you still tell what color it is, the make, the model, depending how thick the trees was, how bright it was out. So, I mean, if you think about it, I'm just looking out my window right now, and our neighbor's house, which is at least 100 feet away, let's say it's 150 feet away, I could easily tell the identity of someone who I knew that was standing out there. So, I mean, a football field, 300 feet, I'm looking at our distant neighbors, and I don't know that I could identify a person at that distance. So the point is, Holly is looking 150 yards, which, a football field and a half, that's a pretty good distance. So obviously from that distance, well, now I'm looking down my street the other way, and the end of the street is at least 150 yards away. And a car just pulled in, and maybe you could tell the make and model. But if you're looking through trees, we don't know how dense these trees are. But so the point is that can really get mucky, and I probably should have just written there, through the tree she sees a black pickup truck. Although, well, maybe not, because you really do need to know about how far away it is in terms of, could she run after it and catch up to it, or if it was a person, or is it hopelessly too far away, or exactly what. So, yeah. So we go into the pickup truck, and this here, I mean, I don't recall what my frame of mind was 9 weeks ago, but I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Am I wrong in thinking that Dad'll be upset if you deliver me unless I'm perfect condition? See that? I mean, it's too glib. Rachel's thing, too glib. Deny they're delivering to me. Very clever. So right now, I guess I was thinking, what if Lexi, cuts herself or breaks her arm or something and makes her dad mad, and then he takes it out on Rachel. I don't know. But Rachel is, kind of gone full on wacky by now, and which is probably, if this was a third act and she was completely unraveling, that would probably be good. But as is, you can see there's 142 pages in the script right now, which is at least 35 too many. So I've just got a bunch of, I won't say garbage, but I'll just say stuff from the way back script that I haven't deleted yet. And the reason I don't is because if I want a little snatch of dialogue or something that I had previously written and think that I might use, I can just page down, or search and find it as opposed to opening up an old script and finding it, or obviously starting from scratch, which is sometimes the better thing to do. Everything you told me, this is really about you. The business is about. So here's Rachel spilling her guts out. I mean that I mean it's certainly something she could stay. Turns out to sting, gets pregnant. I mean, imagine hearing that. I mean, I really don't mind that dialogue because that just shows her for what she is. And then I don't know that she would follow up with that line or a backhanded apology. I don't know that she would do any of that, but some of this stuff isn't bad. It just maybe doesn't belong here or should be somewhere else. The other thing in Da Vinci is I can't see how much longer I've got before this is out, and I don't want to talk a whole bunch over the end of it because I don't have my screenwriter's journey graphic anymore. I'm sure I could recreate it. It was just typing, but seriously, dear old dad. I feel like the day of writing is drawing to a close here, but the gunfights at our hands. So, yes. Oh, there we go. The day ended with a cliffhanger. So welcome to Da Vinci. Again, I'm not sure what day this is, but I'll find out and get back to you.